Part 12 of the Blue Review, Volume 1, Issue Number 3, edited by John Middleton Murry. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. General Literature by Frank Swinnerton. Irish Plays and Playwrights. Lady Gregory's New Comedies. The Joy of the Theatre. Mr. Pett Ridge, in a passage almost excusably underlined and overquoted, made a stout lady exclaim after hearing Kathleen Mavourneen sung, "Anything about Ireland always makes me cry. I come from Kent." That remark, overemphasised though it is into travesty, does nevertheless show that Mr. Pett Ridge's sense of things is not so purely grotesque and derivative as some readers are in the habit of suggesting. It shows that he is not unaware of piercing general truths, one of which is that there is prevalent in England a shocking sentimentality over the subject of Ireland. Mournful Irish songs produce free tears, however bad the songs may be. Songs such as Come Back to Erin are as popular with the general public as Father O'Flynn. At the time of the Boer War, one of the songs that moved drunken men most easily to tears was What Do You Think of the Irish Now? From the easily moved drunkard to the enthusiast in other fields is not a very great step. In the theatre, the case is only on a different level. Of course, lovers of sentimental songs find themselves driven away by the Irish drama, excepting by the farces of Lady Gregory, which are sufficiently clear to be acceptable by all minds. But there is nevertheless a danger that in our love of the beautiful tones and phrases, we may be misled into thinking that whatever comes out of Ireland must be first-rate. The cause of English loyalty to Ireland is the fact that the English, having lost nationality in empire, look with wonder at a nation within that empire, no longer puzzled and sullen, but proud of every part of its heritage. Where the history of England in the 19th century embraces a bewildering host of petty bullyings and stupidities, and clumsy sad dismays and errors, the history of Ireland, read either with or without parti pris, is a record of splendid lost endeavour. Nothing so quickly touches the heart and moves swift enthusiasm as lost endeavour. It is without avail that Mr. Shaw exposes the Irish, or that some of the latter Irish dramatists painstakingly dwell in shady walks of the national life. The enthusiasm has kindled. The English are, on the whole, more prone to excite themselves about the Irish, as a character, or as a nation, or as an arts-producing colony, than they are about any other, even the most distant, section of the empire. It was to be, and is, and all we can do now is to try to discriminate between the real virtues of the Irish, and those virtues which have been plastered onto the Irish by our own solemn superficiality. In America, the transplanted Irish grew angry with the greatest modern play, but there has sprung up there, as here, a parasitic literature, founded upon the writings of Ireland. I do not refer to such books as Mr. P. P. Howe's study of Synge, which is profoundly critical as well as enthusiastic, but I may perhaps allow myself to describe Mr. Cornelius Wiegand's book, Irish Plays and Playwrights, Constable 6s. and 6d. net, as a curious mixture of shrewd criticism and preposterous comment, due in part to a ravenous desire for completeness, and in part to an inability to find the exact criticism for each item under survey. Mr. Wiegand is obsessed by what he insists upon calling the Celtic Renaissance, and the index to his book shows a perfectly amazing industry in the reading and correlation of poets, playwrights, and novelists. But although a sixth of the whole work is taken up with a huge estimate of the works of William Sharp, and although Ibsen and Maeterlinck are freely referred to, one may go the whole length of the book and fail to find mention of the fact that Goldsmith and Mangan were Irishmen, while such modern writers as James Stephens, Winifred Letts and Lord Dunsany are either practically or wholly ignored. I should not personally have included Goldsmith as a participant in the Celtic Renaissance, But Mr. Wiegand is at pains to show that George Moore is the only great Irish novelist, because Miss Edgeworth is not the equal of Miss Austen. Apart from the fact that the sex of a writer is not the only thing to be considered in comparative criticism, it may also be said that Miss Edgeworth was a very good novelist indeed, and that in any case, the introduction of her name, and the names of many other persons of like irrelevance, has not a great deal to do with the Irish literary movement. Truth is that Mr. Wiegand has not kept to the title of his book because he wanted to rope in all he knew about Irish literature. That has been his undoing. Instead of taking the spirit of each writer and illustrating his criticism by examples chosen for the purpose, he seems to take every work in turn and to attempt some apt criticism upon it. The supply of aperçus proves on the whole to be very unequal to the demand, and Mr. Wiegand goes bothering round a point until he is really smothered by his own unhappy method. Thus, in the essay on Synge, we get this comical hotchpotch, which goes gravely from one irrelevant comparison to another. Borrow, who comes to mind more often than any other writer as one reads Synge, chose to avoid love scenes, and Borrow's follower, Mr. Hewlett, for all his gusto, has no such exaltation as this. Had Harry Richmond taken to the road with Kiyomi, we might have known something like it. A chapter out of the early life of juggling Jerry and his old girl, done in the manner of Love in the Valley, would be still nearer to it. I doubt if Synge had read Meredith, and even had he, the life of the roads and their cottages that Synge knew so well was his master, and no writer at all, so that all these suppositions bring us to an admission of their futility. Mr. Wiegand is not often as bad as this, but his book would have been better if it had aimed at being simply a critical study of its subject, and not a meandering stream of often perfunctory commentary. I said that Lady Gregory had the power to please English sentimentalists, who were affronted by Synge. By this I did not mean that Lady Gregory was sentimental. Her work has a quite admirable freedom from sentimentality, and her notes to a new volume, New Plays, Putnam, 5 shillings net, are full of sage remarks. The plays themselves are similar to those which we have previously seen, and perhaps the best of them is Damer's Gold, a 2-act comedy. 1, Coates, is in Lady Gregory's less happy style, an antic squabble, which resembles in its chattering style such a play as The Workhouse Ward. These plays produce much laughter in the theatre, but they are not really amusing. Lady Gregory says that she began to write comedies because they were needed for the Abbey Theatre, and even such plays as Hyacinth Halvey and, in the new volume, The Full Moon, have a thin body of funning, rather than a genuine humorous impulse. For the reason that it is based upon a moral idea, and that verbal eccentricity is less sought after in the speeches, I think Damer's Field is the best play in the new volume. It has some character, and is strictly worked out. That cannot be said of The Bogeyman, with its flail-like speeches, although the idea is genuinely comic. But Lady Gregory is really a serious dramatist, and not a writer of farcical dialogues, and it is when she is furthest away from caricature that her work is most characteristic. Mr. Gilbert Cannon has contributed to Mr. Batsford's charming new series of fellowship books, 2 shillings net per volume, a very refreshing essay on the joy of the theatre. Mr. Cannon is intensely hopeful, looking to the future for the realization of his dreams, and it is delightful to find him so generous in acknowledging good work, however far it may be in its aims from his own ideal. Mr. Cannon's book is practically an appeal on behalf of the artist. He wants the artist to take joy in the making of beautiful things for their own sake. Only so can art be truly a creative force. This, naturally, is difficult at the present time, when we are but slightly emergent from a reaction against insincerity. But Mr. Cannon has a clear perception of encouraging signs. when he so obviously looks to the younger generation for further advances along the splendid road to a new artistic era, the younger generation cannot but accept the challenge, not because it is Mr. Cannon who demands support, but because Mr. Cannon's is the immediate voice that speaks. But it is impossible to avoid finding some peculiar fascination in ugliness for its own sake. If it is the sense of beauty that makes the artist self-expressive, it is the sense of ugliness that tempers his rapture, and gives it the quality of fine steel. Synge is full of the sense of ugliness, no less than the sense of beauty, and if these things are in his work, lightened by the most wonderful power of imagining and transmitting the fine quality of joy, we must not omit to record their presence. Some of the other Irish dramatists have no joy. They are guilty of tame acquiescence in a movement, a serious dependence upon the acting of the Abbey Company for an effect of reality. This is not as it should be. They have actors whose powers seem equal to all demands. They have a loyal audience of their countrymen abroad, and the beastly patronage of the polite class, plus the sentiment of the Celtomaniac. Yet even Mr. Wiegand, although he seems to have hunted through the work of the minor Irish dramatists with characteristic vigilance and a mildly exerted enthusiasm, is forced to hesitate. It is one of the worst points of his book that he goes through everything and leaves the reader without any conclusions. But it does appear more or less distinctly that only one or two of the young men are doing work to warrant inclusion in a Celtic Renaissance. On the evidence, the Renaissance has outgrown its strength by being over-cultivated. What Mr. Cannon wants, and what we all want, is an art that bites through the surface of life as a beginning, something with vitality, no matter how that vitality may be directed. In the modern Irish drama there is little vitality, and it is still so much the fashion to cry at anything Irish, or to laugh, that it will be some time before we realise that what edifies us in the performance of modern Irish plays is the presentation, not the fine heart of joy which we think is there. Synge had the joy Mr. Cannon wants, and his splendid preface to The Tinker's Wedding is quoted appropriately in Mr. Cannon's book. But where else in all this boasted Celtic Renaissance has joy any place? Mr. Yeats is a great poet. Mr. James Stephens has a daring and amazing personality. But beyond these names, the Irish literary movement is often enough a sad and spiritless affair. We have got in England, though we make no boast of it and have no books written about it, a dramatic movement of equal strength. We have men who are really striking out new paths and trying to go beyond their sincere predecessors, both in sincerity and in creative power. Only the appalling sentimentality and false judgment which the Irish habitually arouse in England is responsible for the great overpraising of the Irish literary movement. We shall have many more fat books about the Celtic Renaissance, and apart from Synge as a dramatist and Mr. Yeats as a poet, there will always be the need to fill the book with essays on William Sharp or some other persons who have nothing to do with the case. The sooner Mr. Cannon's joy is triumphantly found in the English theatre, the sooner we shall, dramatically speaking, get going. And then perhaps the rise to eminence of the English school will provoke the Irish dramatists who are writing dull plays about morbidly uninteresting people into some sort of counter-renaissance. Otherwise we shall continue to be sentimental about the Irish, who are sometimes, but not often, sentimental about themselves, until the conceited nation will assume that the names plastered onto a loyal and enthusiastic little body of workers have really been earned. The Celtic Renaissance is really a false term, and it does harm, by exalting into a titanic struggle what is really a movement among very modern, very thoughtful, and very derivative amateurs. End of Part 12.